Hi, dental assisting. I took a look at your notes to figure out where you're at with the senior project, and I think one of the problems that a lot of you are having and struggling with is where to find information. So here's a new place that I found, and it's basically something that is sponsored by the state of New York, and I found out about it because I got a little card when my driver's license renewed. And actually, as a New York State resident, apparently we have a lot of resources here at this electronic library. So I clicked on students from the Novel New York website, and I went to the Scholastic Encyclopedia, and I think this is one of the resources we might find information on cultures. I went to high school and I searched Italian culture, and I was able to locate some information. So here's information here about Italian Americans. This just general information about culture probably isn't going to help me out, but number 3 is really what I clicked on, and I was able to find some good information. So I'll show you how I was able to print out that information, highlight, and make some margin notes. Close this. Close this, and look for my document. There it is. So I found this again on the Novel New York Scholastic, and it's this high school level paper. And I went through and I highlighted, and remember we want to keep our highlighting to a minimum. And what I did was I made some margin notes about how I might use information. So the first paragraph had information about religion. The next paragraph had information about Italian Americans and when and how they immigrated to the U.S. and where in the U.S. you might find significant Italian American populations. More about when they immigrated. Here's areas of Italy where the immigrants tended to come from. I found a word, expatriate, and that's a person who lives outside their native country. That's just a word that might not be common, so I circled it and I identified the definition in the margin. Just something else you can do with margin notes. The professions of Italian American immigrants, difficulties they face, discrimination. Then as I was reading, I found something I thought was kind of interesting, and they talked about how Italian Americans are often depicted as gangsters or in organized crime. And so as I read that, I thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought, that might be something I'd use as a grabber in the introduction of my paper, because I could maybe have an image of the gangsters from Goodfellas. So as I looked down here, I found some information on family structure, how Italian Americans tend to, or have tended to view education throughout the years, prejudice they faced during World War II, that gangster stereotype again, contributions to the United States that Italian Americans have made, a little more about their culture, information about Italian American artists, politicians, and this gave me further reading. So if I wanted to find any of this information, I could go to the library and check out these books. And actually this source also shows me how to cite an MLA style, and I would want to make sure that that's correct when I write my final paper, but at least it identifies all the elements, the author, and that kind of thing for me, so that's really helpful. So you might be thinking, where did I get the information to decide what to put in margins? And basically what I used was some of these research ideas that Mrs. Lemoncelli talked about to get you started. So that's where, you probably remember I had a margin note about religion, and I had a margin note about family structure. So basically, as I had this list right out as I read the article, and as I found information in these areas, I made a margin note about that. And that'll help me later on to organize my paper in an outline form. It'll also help me to put things in my own words. So this is just a quick example of how those margin notes might look when you use that strategy. See you soon.